So go. You think, Dr. Stewart? I'll go. Hello, everyone. Yante. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Del. I'm with the Navajo Department of Health and also our Navajo Epidemiology Center. Nashni Nalka. Ajin Bida Inishigi Thanashnish. Aro Kintlichi Neda Shema. Aro Tachi Neda Shije. Ashkanzoy Dash Chedo, my Deshkish Neda Shana. Ado National Kache epidemiology, disease surveillance. Aje Shananish for the nation, Navajo Nation. Ako the vaccine presentation that we are going to do with Dr. Stewart. She's a infectious disease doctor at Chinle IHS. I just want to say a few words on, some of the partnerships that continues to this day with our Navajo Department of Health, our Epidemiology Center, and other sister programs within our Department of Health. We continue to do a lot of the surveillance on certain infectious diseases, including COVID. COVID that from the collection of data, the monitoring of cases every day still continues to this day, and continues to be part of our work. And all of our partners are continuing to support the work that we do, including our partners from IHS and also our state partners from Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah, and also CDC. And we also partner with some of our academic institutions like NAU and Johns Hopkins and other nonprofit organizations like COPE. So we are a big team continuing to surveil and monitor a lot of the infectious disease cases on Navajo. And then, of course, measles is a new hot topic, as we are seeing some measles cases around our nation, our border towns like Flagstaff, and there are other measles cases across the country. So this is our part of the work that we continue to do, and we just want this presentation that we're going to do is about measles, but also the importance on the vaccination piece of certain vaccine preventable diseases, such as COVID, such as measles, and the good things about vaccination. We try to communicate to our people, because I think a lot of people are misinformed about vaccination. And hopefully these presentations that we are going to begin doing will provide some insight and also hopefully build some confidence in people receiving vaccinations, including COVID. As we all know, we went through the pandemic of COVID, and many of us lost family members, close relatives, and loved ones. And a part of the vaccination for COVID is important. It prevents severe illness. It keeps you out of the hospital, and it provides protection to others, including your family members and loved ones. So those are some of the right information that we would like to provide in these presentations going forward. We like to provide some of these updates on a monthly basis, perhaps, from using the Office of the President, Vice President's platform, so that we can provide the right information to our people and everyone who is listening in, so that you are not misinformed and that you are receiving the right information is the goal, or one of the goals, as part of our vaccine team for Navajo Nation. That's also a team that continues to meet on a monthly basis, and we discuss the vaccinations or the vaccines for all different types of diseases, including COVID and measles. So that's just a brief introduction and some of the objectives or aims for this presentation, and hopefully we'll provide more presentations going forward. That's also the goal. If Office of President, Vice President will allow us to have these presentations going forward. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Stewart to provide her presentation. Thank you. Dr. Stewart?
Thank you so much. I'm just going to present my slides here. Thank you. So thank you for joining us today to learn about why vaccines are so important and also why I recommend them for all of my patients and family members. To start, I'm going to talk about how vaccines work. There are different types of vaccines, but the general idea is that vaccines contain part of a pathogen, otherwise known as a germ. When this is introduced into the body's immune cells make antibodies to attack the pathogen. And then if the body is exposed to the pathogen in the future, the body recognizes it and is already ready with antibodies to attack the pathogen and prevent the person from getting sick. Today's vaccines use only ingredients that they need to be safe and effective. The ingredients of vaccines have specific purposes, which include providing immunity or protection. That's the part of the vaccine that I just explained. Other ingredients can include preservatives that protect the vaccine from outside bacteria or fungus. Today, preservatives are only used on vials of vaccines that have more than one dose, but most vaccines are also available in a single-use vials and do not have preservatives in them. Stabilizers help the active ingredients in vaccines continue to work while the vaccine is made, stored, and moved. And finally, sometimes trace amounts of some ingredients that are needed to produce the vaccine remain in the final product, and this would include ingredients which were used to kill the virus or inactivate a toxin. Since there are different types of vaccines for different diseases, the timing and dosing of vaccines varies. Some vaccines provide lifelong immunity from a single dose. An example of this would be the chickenpox vaccine. Others provide greater protection after multiple doses, like the diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus vaccines for kids. And then some vaccines need to be updated frequently because the pathogen mutates often, such as the flu vaccine and then also more recently, the COVID vaccine. Before a vaccine's introduction to the general public, a vaccine candidate must go through extensive lab testing and then several phases of increasingly large clinical trials. For example, in phase 1, which includes 20 to 100 healthy volunteers, we figure out, is the vaccine safe? Does this vaccine seem to work? Are there any serious side effects? And how does the dose of the vaccine relate to the side effects? Then in phase 2, which includes several hundred volunteers, we find out more about what are the most common short-term side effects and how are the volunteers' immune systems responding to the vaccine. And then finally, in phase 3, with hundreds of thousands of volunteers, we find out how do people who get the vaccine and people who do not compare. Is the vaccine safe? Is the vaccine effective? I want to point out that even in situations where vaccines are developed for a new disease, they still have to go through these extensive steps and undergo the same evaluation. And once a vaccine is in use, it is continuously monitored using extensive surveillance systems. National regulatory authorities like the FDA continue to monitor and investigate reported adverse events or side effects following immunization to ensure that the vaccine is safe. In addition to national surveillance, there's also global surveillance across the world to detect, report, and investigate any adverse effects to immunization. Thanks in large part to this vaccine safety infrastructure, before, during, and after vaccine introduction, cases of vaccine-caused illness or injury are incredibly rare. So far, we have discussed what vaccines are, what they are made of, and how their safety is ensured. Now I'm going to focus on the benefits of vaccines. As we know that vaccines help an individual person stay healthy, and vaccines help protect everyone in the community, even when some members of the community cannot be vaccinated. For example, the COVID vaccine is very effective at preventing severe illness from COVID. This graph shows weekly hospitalization rates for adults who are not vaccinated, which is the top line, and who did get the COVID vaccine, which is the flat line on the bottom. You can see that the hospitalization rate was much higher, in fact, 16 times higher in those that did not get the vaccine as compared to those who did. Another example of a very effective vaccine is the measles vaccine. And I specifically want to bring up measles as we've been hearing a lot about it in the news. Measles was actually considered eliminated from the US in 2000, but so far this year we've had 120 cases across the country, including some in the state of Arizona in Maricopa and Coconino counties. Cases usually start when someone who is not vaccinated against measles travels to a country where there are higher levels of measles and then returns with measles, and it spreads in communities where people are not vaccinated. One of the reasons why measles vaccine is so important is that measles is one of the most contagious diseases. It is highly contagious and spreads through the air when an infected person coughs or sneezes. It is so contagious that if one person has it, 9 out of 10 people of all ages around him or her will also become infected if they are not protected. It can also stay suspended in the air for up to 2 hours, which contributes to how contagious it is. When people get measles, it usually starts like a cold or the flu with fever, cough, runny nose, conjunctivitis, which you can see in this picture of this little kid with the watery eyes, and also spots in the mouth, which are called Koplik spots. People are contagious during this time, and then they start getting a rash about 2 to 4 days after they first start having symptoms. And the rash looks like red spots that start on the face and then that spreads down to the trunk and then the arms and the legs and the whole body. Before the measles vaccine, nearly all children got measles by the time they were 15 years old. And this is an example of the effects of measles per 10,000 people who get it. Out of 10,000 people who get measles, 2,000 would be hospitalized, which is 1 out of every 5. And that's very high compared to things like COVID or the flu. And of these 10,000 people, 1,000 people would get ear infections, which could potentially result in permanent hearing loss. 10 people would get cases of encephalitis, which is an infection around the brain, and that can also cause permanent brain damage. About 500 children would get pneumonia, which was the most common cause of death. And unfortunately, about 10 to 30 child deaths happened per 10,000 people who got measles, which resulted in several hundred deaths per year before the measles vaccine. But fortunately, we have a very effective vaccine for measles, which is called the MMR, and also protects against mumps and rubella. The normal recommended vaccine schedule is for children to receive 2 vaccines, one at 12 months old and the second anywhere from 4 to 6 years old. There's also the MMRV vaccine, which is less common measles vaccine, but it's essentially the same as MMR, except for it also includes varicella. And these vaccines are highly effective. They are 93% protective against measles with 1 vaccination, and after 2 vaccinations, they're 97% protective. But the other wonderful thing about vaccines, like the measles vaccine, is that vaccines help protect everyone in a community. Herd immunity means when enough people in a population have immunity that disease can't spread. For example, in this picture, if the person in white with the spots has measles, the blue people around them who are immune to the disease will protect everyone else because they can't get measles and spread it. So the baby that's depicted in the orange will be safe, protected by their vaccinated community members. Now I'm going to talk about some common myths about vaccines and the facts around them. Myth number 1 is that vaccines cause the diseases they are designed to prevent. This is not true. For example, inactivated vaccines cannot cause disease. So sometimes patients will tell me, I can't get the flu vaccine because when I got the flu vaccine before I got the flu. And that's not possible because it just includes parts of the flu vaccine and it can't cause the flu. But mild symptoms can happen from vaccines and are expected. This indicates an immune response, but not infection. Common side effects from vaccines include fever, tiredness, body aches, and redness or swelling where the shot was given. The side effects are mild and they will go away after a few days. The fact is that vaccines undergo extensive monitoring and testing before approval, and they are safe. Myth number 2 is that vaccines are not necessary. Getting sick is a part of life. But the truth is that risks of natural infection are greater than the risks of immunization for every recommended vaccine. So vaccine preventable diseases like flu, COVID, measles have many serious health effects and complications that can be avoided. I talked about measles and the complications for that. And COVID, we know that results in a lot of hospitalizations. But even for flu, more than 200,000 people per year are hospitalized from flu, including about 20,000 children, and people die from the flu each year. The fact is that the benefit of immunization far outweighs the risk. And then myth number 3 is that it is better to space out childhood vaccines using an alternative schedule. But we know that from birth, a baby's immune system is well equipped to respond to vaccines. There's no evidence that spreading out the vaccine schedule improves health outcomes, but delaying vaccines increases the time children will be susceptible to diseases. That means, for example, with measles, if parents don't get their child vaccinated when they turn 12 months old, they are susceptible to measles, especially when there's more circulating cases. The fact is that spreading out vaccines leaves children unprotected. With that, I will end here, but I hope I have explained that vaccines work, vaccines are safe, and please make sure that you and your family are up to date on all your vaccines. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Stewart, for that presentation. Next, we're going to go transition to one of our other partners, Ms. Goldtooth from Gallup Indian Medical Center, and she's going to provide some insight into the Navajo traditional perspective as far as vaccines or vaccinations go. And we're thankful for her partnership in helping us provide some Navajo perspectives from a cultural, traditional standpoint. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Sheila. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Sheila Goldtooth and she my deshkiji ain't a shnido, kitchini, bashishinado, but Annie dash a chair on a kaidina, dash another. Tana cut in the house at the in Nasha. Ado quite again, not in Georgia as a eager in Nashinish. Native medicine coordinator had no, it a non the Shigin Shahi snido, Asian on the shish. Ado she could ya, I didn't etch the hat ya. أزاي هتا إنكي نار نشتاق إبن ناي نخاطع اللي نحني هتا أهجي دكوسن سادا أو يوجه نهات كأي كأجي يجأنا بعض اللي لقي أزاي جاي هتا بالعادة تسلح هاشين زهنا دهال جشا أي كأجي أسكو أي بحشنة دولي. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my slides here. So I can go to the next slide here. Okay. A coco Dida ze dat selenle the cosintide ero da ya the quigosin lant echo bahon negida hashin zahna da haljish olchin yaj da ba da sele ya ha ya benina niche di sa tota da di ni do ha benina yan ha da dot se jo kwa ya bahashnet only Joannin leich da ja llachod a hynny nond ni ne ni hyd ni gi llachod a ja ni hi da ho a do le ni masan ni hi cheda llachod a bi da ho a ko beni na ja I da has ane da llacho hot a coco din hits isigi llachod a ja alt go ni na bahane yn le gon dal ni don dal dogi net isji de llacha ochotza a coco din le ishin yi danigi jo llacha a coho skeda ya le anichen dan nilt ane an le da hoda na da hi da ado de kushi uyu chiyan hot a ya chulin da anchen dan nilt adon le the better edo da le Delje hot adan le tsingi jo ita llaho hot ene according hits is a lage na bahagi llahot ene ita ado dish gene de yan chul enegi llahot llahot as a le condent an na hailni do edo da ya a haden shin heki go do bahos no jo hat ashin ya danest ado hat ya dal ya go da jo ado ja ba chunit no don hil bahos no yi da chunit ist hat llaho adza llaho yila eben na di immune di nenegi immune system bedi nenegi jo enit is ka chuni gauge na ba le de cosin hidel na hoda edo da ha idan hidel na hoda an hits isigi hat ashin is ich on hot aiche na ba le na di stin de llaho hot za do di yi danegi llaho za go binina ni hits isigi ayo ichen do bahagi ayo ye ohne hayden leselin a koho quage vaccines hol gahagi is jo hot ya trodel insulin a koko chiyan ado yi danigi kushin aza adon le kenet na hailin ho jo hashin zago nasnelo ha ishin pa hatalia ya ben zago den not benia jo hodat hegi ha ishin tabi don ni don hil bahozun na ado hadden shin hegi had shin dalia a copy the llacho hot a chemical station ado preserve dal inda de no da I kha kushin shat a hegi jo a hegi llacho in hi lan hits is be yet the conit is yena ba han llacho za Aron le bet llahada dat a hegi tala washa jo ishi chul enigi sto a hot a ishi tapio di bet di llahton di ne hinni da bahil I do ni hita da bet chi jo e don hit 1000 da tapi jo hot a hegi ni is khalla ho hola aron da chian sa a yo I tasidli ha shit e shin yon hit khana Di sé a go chuéta a jo se le chana a slatte a bin go ná kida naslí aróiada aho ná kida beis ba ija behe des bin go chuhigi na stí jo dat a higi éro da an le dal chanigita jo da jo da jian le hodat a higi jo do behos in da bedaliagi a ko hanna so nit is jens in hallen le den dan hallen le ha ko nit is tra hola llachod a hola ko ella na bato le ja apen o hidden place li eben na vaccines da hola ko di ka ja hol le ja ha ishin le be de dol na hagi kwa an kit is adole ado do be de dol nata do da eben na go da de nebeta de na be do be de dol nata atisne vaccines ado na anle has ago lo le nilchi gi llachod za Adon le trota la hotaza adon le alketa jo yan le tro an le zespieto hatazlon da an le sepito da hatazlon an le neto da hatazlon jo ta o de tlane o aje ni hilla ta pe hata he kha a hat a de tlane kadishti de ya apa hasti a ha ishi ta bi adon jo tlatan le gon jada o yo dat ilze da hal ahlen le badli ho ya ta ye ho ja e betsando da bik in hal kino da haishi da pa ha gi do da bi yi dan le no sam bi yo ya beli chenne e do da tron da de ko ho da jo ho da e go ko bin na an le tro ha da zlene da di tlesen ayo bichetne sitli jo ita e llahot a has a kopinina en hits isigi yitne land adon le ishi na gloshi da hi a da bista itlana tsohigi a hatazlani de tlan hito a de tlana dishin de llahot za koho a hot adon le chil dan se le ze dan se gi to a hot a team pa ho jo hot a dan se jo a bi la chi I je ho a den da dal on da a yo bich hasti jo le chi de bi to ha I jo le gas that a hi da ado a ha ishi e do ya a gi ado a team pa ho da u yu that I ze la jo ho that e go sha ho ho za gi e ben na e sto ni hits isigi le a you see chet na pa do le gi do yitene la da sali ado and the quishi da old ancient sto le yastrana nahta jo ni hits is the hakazich hadana la do le hich ha ni do le shmenia aron le so the zenda da in and the ado haida nachni hille heta eto dan le haishi an ha khapik le shna hotle ado dana hotle tapi ado ak kheta tapi jo a chance of the zani hot abata in a ko edi nachni tabchen to ishi to ya that hegin da jigi jo e bchen hot ya kodot abche so hot zin dan at ya ayo to de ida eben na edi kwage zeigi hot abel da tsgo kwage ya hashi ja gelone het is trachna de sko ko don hit de dol na tapen ja vaccines bedienen in ge hot outchul adon le khacheta del in jo is niet is trato ja dat hi jan leje besin hital to ho altro het is trato ja ha ge ho la hot jan gelone is tra na hot li na jo adishin de do yo a del da giben na di kodo ze he ka do was ben ya vaccines with the nigi hot hollo aro and da u you go at nachni isat hegi kode he kaya de dachni seli jo ni de godi de kosen sanas it's at that non ni jo ha den shin ho ado kode he kaya de ya ni do ye go ya kodo bechin si ba ad kwijin shi be ado ashon aze gi hasli na pa do lefene ya jo hotat ego do hozen da atishin de o ha you den ishin yan dashni ado do ya anle haden shinta anle he kaya no has ado danat agida dat ahina loshi da benashni da jot adata ntateshne eben na di is egi eya kwage eya kholon ado khanal iho eya at etole okay the next slide a coco shahoni edi dishin de shahoni yego shahot asali a coben vaccines gi chon on de zegi chon on ya yat kodo ya na halia a coco jork da shahot ene de shno bahashne ako eben nachet ni hichi yani lahot ene do aniche na nilt do aniche hajo ya hat ashin kil behosen nest anigi ado ba honizin hot ayi dane at ya lahot ado disjinde da do o ilt is do do be lahot za jol ke da a kot o ekon ado aje dat is an jana go kongi be eight is ado so de zindabel hot yabel so de zinada jian del ine ado adishin de yan del nesto u yuje Kenanish da halonigi ben na yadi o ben dat ni dohi da chodel do ya tot da il sa o skin hon de no dohi da hot da ado ze do hot dis de do yo le ze dat hegi chill dat hegi do the question ze shot hegi do yo chul in da sikli zel agent ya ishi kot skin shon do nishigi jo hot de bit ya ko cho il isha ado on that photo kadai planegi jo ishi bita hakha the question ishi le den the just do it in no ya halle egi jo dat da be openina bahata and trohigi akoko dishin de thought ayitla aro eta ejo yanle tanlenigi da chodel in aro le yasta do chodel in de hot an del yin ha aro le na halkin hota eta thoda hot ada beta idando ze nan clean qad ya ada tsayat hot chis dol in ladi no ayo bit sit clean na jo an le oda u you le en dalni higi benna do llaha o hon ni higi benna adon hichi ya do ya an hinna ni dan den le sa an la hon dan send the question shot a trust ejida that hegi is a leta do da ya ochenda adon le that hegi the question chichendo o you hot yan hich ya and le dan sell at ya do yon his better husband aro anda ot yan chil o you chil in hota be en up and it da ba ahonitzen at ya do yo hot ni his better husband do yo chil in da aro ba na hoint en sto ya John le danigi llachot aro ebenina din hits east hat llachotza go ha ishin ketol na do ba o hidentle aro na la ishin en nidigi dat ado yo bespa hozenda jo dit is na ba an le dat bes o chi hat ashin le hat is go ha ni do le higi bes o chi and llachot in llachot zago jo aro ya yo o hidden place eben na disg the diabetes that ishna heart disease that ishna la dasali llachot ita aro llachot zagi ben na sto hot ya benal kha ado anda alkeda do jo yo ya at isra hat el zehnen ge da jil in the gun da jil iketa ado le da iketa ben da jil nish de beda where da halondo da jil khad na loshi da koje ya ba de jint on aja honan nish da jil on jo hot ya honan nish ne do lachet na haji na halen ade do yo hot era ade ya o si dado do yo ya hat da ya hot Diego neilnish da sidlin jog ade dishin de ya shahot nan nishigi de edin le o yuje nan nishat aslin sto aro an le hot the cheetah an le it's on the just da jo ita den khama kodo ishin yangi hat ist khatna le ado khama just o ado hashin zache alchini yaja jadlo ado aho hat ashi e yakodo cloud a jiyado le ado nana kinal tata jo e kote e hat ispa haya e kodo e hot apa hanne do at da holianda kote no ado le Viastratnan nach der Randel Rotratschenan da hotet no anle aniden jurada jot a e ka da ho Juliana ko dischi de la hot a ko la hot za a ko ebenina e ya the vaccines hat ninigi e chon on e ya at e no e ko do ba huilne. Next slide. A ko di o ujas at ze ahan do bahagi jodi tla jol net measles edi hata aje jano ena lishno jol ne aro u anle away aje ichi do hosten jo e hot ad kushin lat abes bada at sidole ed kuigoshin agent do bahni yadi at is hat isigi agent na bato lefnia ado dik at tsihni to e hat no e do hot ado din naha la dolni skopinina lahot ele ado di de kosen tagi do honana zati in ni dansni lahona dolni la ben na de kui de shin hot abes ada tsigi lahona za jo ai abe hat ashin laho dat dolni a ko e benina e ya ko di het anachana dat ot se het nisle ado ani di kado ya hol neit u yu de nepa da sigo e ya e at h hol ni dole e kado at h hol ni dole la ko bet da het lehgi do ba da sigi e apa o dole a ko eben na e ya din ha da at sido ani na nistadi no e kado ba da huilne ado nzago e ya inahagi jo e hot ioli jo e di kwaige da bahagi vaccines bidi ninigi a ko e kodo e ya di no e ya ani be da ho jilya e ya e ado do e ya bahat zdi bi da holon da ye gon da ka ado ye go hajabik e ya ilketa ti do yego e ya haja on das kago ahot on da di the neb e kodobel bada tsidole ado aniltro e kodo alla asi zinago jo e kodo na ha o tsigo e kojo the nen hik e dan linigi na ha alchina ni himma ado ni hije ado khishi belta hini nanigi e altro e kodo e ya betchayada hot e do le do betad do nata ado an hisi zinge hot abeta huilya e kojo o yugo the nehegi sto be ba huilya do le jo e hot e ya nil a ko benina e ya ayes e ya e hot e ya a da hujilya di haishi ichendo bahagi bel khana at se ho khalak at dishin de saha hot ashi ni eta e saha hot ahini nani benina e di ze dat e hi ado chuli dan de dishin de saha hot za do ahini na ge saha hot e da ge saha hot za ado ke huit in ge saha hot za gi benina e di hot e ya bahuil do kodo hot e ya ya eho e ya atro no ho kat ne e kodoba da atsigo ya eho e ya na hini na do da di no jo even ye e hot aba da hilne. I believe that's it, the end of my slides. So thank you.
Okay. Sheila, thank you for your presentation and helping us communicate the right information when it comes to vaccine or vaccinations. Cool. Yeah, Sheila, thank you for your help. That was very good information. And so, and you too, Dr. Stewart, thanks for your help. And I'll just make some closing comments here. I don't know if there are any questions, but if you do, just put it in the chat or the chat box. Just to add on to what Dr. Stewart and Ms. Goldtooth shared, I just want to also mention, they mentioned that these vaccines are they're investigated, make sure they're safe to use. They go through multiple phases of investigation and testing to make sure they're safe to use among people. So just to add on to that is we have our own, within our Department of Health, we have our own research office, the Navajo Nation Research Office, where a lot of our partners, a lot of our researchers from different places, different academic institutions have been doing vaccine research on Navajo, among our Navajo people for many years, even back, I think, into the 1980s, 1990s. And some of these infectious disease back then were quite prevalent. They were pretty common occurrence among our people. And some of the research that has been done since to now, there are some vaccines that were developed based on the research work. And so some of those vaccines are now a part of the regular routine for childhood immunizations. So like strep pneumo and Haemophilus influenza type B, those are the two pathogens that now have, there are vaccines for them, and they're part of the childhood vaccinations currently. And if you look at the data going back to the 90s to now, when it was quite prevalent back in the 90s, compared to now, it's a rare occurrence. So, this is the type of information and research that goes on within our research office. Does prove that, these vaccines are safe, they do work, and they are effective. So I just wanted to add that little piece to our presentation. And there are a lot of researchers that are doing different work among our Navajo people on the nation. So that's all of that is ongoing, and I think we're going to stop here unless there are any. Let me see. Is Dr. Stewart still on, or I can't speak to metformin and diabetes.
What's the question? I can't. Sorry, I'm not looking at the chat in that view.
If you click on the comments on the.
Oh, got it. Let's see. Oh, is metformin medicine really as bad as they say for diabetes? No. Yeah, so I'm trying to think if this was related to vaccines. Yeah, metformin is a medication, so similar to what we were talking about with vaccines today, goes through extensive studies and clinical trials to make sure it's safe and effective. And we use that as a first-line medication for diabetes because it works really well.
Great, thanks, Dr. Stewart. Any other questions? If not, thank you all for joining us. We're going to probably end for now, and hopefully we can continue these monthly discussions going forward, talking about different vaccines, perhaps. Maybe the one I just spoke about, the two vaccines that were developed over the years, coming from our research done on Navajo. And so maybe we can show some of the data for that going forward, provide some the correct information when it comes to vaccines and vaccinations. So I think we're going to end here. So thank you all for joining us. If there's another next month, we're going to do another one. I'm sure let you know. So thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.